What is going on, you guys? Sarah Listy here with Tool Girls Garage. So today I'm going to run you guys through Rockler's newest addition to their beadlock lineup, the updated Beadlock Pro. So if you guys are not familiar with the beadlock system in general, Rockler created this a while back, and it essentially takes all the principles of a mortise and tenon joint, but allows you to do it with a handheld drill. And they've really designed the system to be user-friendly, but to still provide strong, accurate, and well-concealed joints. So one thing that I think is really smart and something Rockler did a good job with as far as forward thinking and really making sure that it could cover a wide range of applications for different users is they created 3 different sizes. They have a 1/2 inch, a 3/8 of an inch, and then also a 1/4 inch. So you have a lot of flexibility as far as material thickness, as well as you can stack the tenons. I did that on a few joints with really great success. Okay, so before I get too far into the actual jig setup, I wanted to run through a couple of the options you have for the actual tenons. So Rockler sells pre-cut, pre-made tenons that you can buy in multi-packs. It's relatively economical. This is, for example, their 3/8 inch stock that is 2 inches long. So it's a very common joint, making it easy and quick. Sometimes that convenience really pays off. As well, they have all of their dimensions in their 12-inch stock. So you can easily just cut this down. Say you only needed 1-inch tenons for your joints or something similar. Obviously, this would be really economical to get the most out of the stock that you have. As well, they also created their own line of router bits that can easily make the tenons to use for this. This works really well. I used it a couple of times on this recent build just to kind of test it out and get a good feel for it, and I feel like it gave me really clean results that I was really happy with. So I love that they did that because every user is going to have a different demand for those consumables, and obviously just different applications. It gives you a lot of versatility, and I think that was really great. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and set up the jig and show you guys exactly how it comes together. So since we're not using spacers, this is really straightforward and simple. You have the drill guide block, and we're going to just literally put that on the back here and insert our wing nuts to line in these spaces. So what's great is on the front of the jig you have markings for the different dimensions of the joints. So you have the 1/4 inch, 3/8 of an inch, and a 1/2 inch. So it's pretty easy to tell when you have it aligned correctly because it'll line up right away. Okay, so once the block is firmly in place, you want to go ahead and make sure it is lined on the A line. So you'll have the A and B, and so basically you will just loosen the wing nut slightly and shift the guide from side to side, and that's how you get the different series of holes. So basically, you always start in the A position, and then you're just gonna tighten it up. It's really easy to do. It's a super natural kind of movement, and you'll know it's right because you'll see all of the different holes right there. And when you get to the next side, you'll see where it sort of shifts. It's really, really cool. So we're using the standard stock for this specific joint, and so whenever you set up the drill guide, you just want to kind of come in right here, and you can see how far it's gonna drill in on the back of the jig. So you've got the different measurements for the 1/4, 3/8 of an inch, and 1/2 inch, so you know when it's set up just for that specific joint. But then also it has measuring markings here, so if you need to adjust it at all, if you're cutting your own tenons and you want something a little longer or a little shorter, you can easily do that. So once we get that where we need it, we're just going to take our hex key and just tighten up this stop. Super easy, and we're good to go. Okay, so the biggest key to getting the beadlock system to work its absolute best for you is really all about setting up. So now we have the jig set up right. It's all about making sure that these lines and markings are just right on. Because a beadlock system relies on your personal markings to center the joint. As long as you have this part done right, you're in a really good position to keep these joints really strong, really simple, and super centered. So in this case, what I did was I found the center of this board. In this case, it was 2 3/8, and I found 1 3/16 inch center. So with beadlock, it is important to get as close to the center as possible. Some joints it's going to matter more than others. It's really just about getting used to the system and getting it as close to accurate as possible. To me, the most important line in this setup is making sure that you've aligned it here as close as possible to exactly where you want this to fall. Basically, as long as these 2 lines are where you want them, you're in a good spot because the jig is going to rely off of those markings to center the joint. Okay, so the next step of this, which is honestly probably the most important part of really ensuring that you're going to have a really good joint that's well placed and super secure and centered, is to make sure that you clamp the jig to the workpiece correctly. So there's a lot of ways to do it. You can use a simple clamp. I found that the most success I had was clamping it to not only the jig, but also to clamp the jig and the workpiece to the table I was working on. In this case, obviously I have a track table, so you could easily utilize that if you have one. I'm gonna just go ahead and use a couple of these clamps because I found that the extra holding power was really, really helpful in this. So I'm gonna go ahead and start drilling. I've double checked that the wing nuts are on the right position and are super secure, so we should be good to go. Okay, super easy as you can tell. And then we're just gonna go to the next hole. So as you can tell, making sure you rid the sawdust out of the joints occasionally definitely helps. At this point now, we're just going to loosen these two wing nuts, and then we're just gonna slide it over to the B position. Now that that is tight and secure and ready to go, we're gonna go for the next one. You'll notice when you first loosen it, you have quite a bit of sawdust in here. Obviously, that is part of the reason I pulled it out several times. What I normally do at this stage is just use a vacuum to sort of cycle it out. Now, this one is slightly more difficult because you're gonna be relying more on the clamping force basically to get it done. So this is when I really like using some stop blocks to just ensure that it's not going to move side to side. So once I've got these nice and tight and it doesn't feel like these are gonna move, which just enough to move back and forth, but it's not moving side to side much. I'm gonna go ahead and position it here, and then we are just going to reclamp the jig down. The line is lining up precisely right here in this window, and then just making sure that the clamping is done well. Again, these stop blocks are gonna help prevent any possible shifting from side to side, and anytime you're using something more narrow, that's important. Obviously, Rockler did a good job of including space on both sides of the jig to allow you to have clamping surface, but just make sure you're always being mindful of that. Okay, so we have the second joint done. We're just going to go ahead and clean it out really quick. As I said, a vacuum and these little picks works really well. In this case, it's actually really very clean, so we should be in a good position there. We're gonna go ahead and put this in and then try to align it up and see how the joint turned out. So again, a mallet is super helpful here. And then, as you can see, obviously there's no glue, but everything is perfectly flush and perfectly aligned exactly how we wanted it. So I would say that was a super success. So what you can do from here is obviously pull it off, glue it in, and then reclamp it, and you're good to go. All right, you guys, I hope you enjoyed this quick walkthrough of the Rockler Beadlock Pro system. As you can see, the Beadlock system is super easy to use, really user-friendly for people of all different experience levels to create really strong, well-concealed, and long-lasting joints. From my shop to yours, happy making.